are you saying, in a sense, that having the right knowledge is only one part of the formula? That you have to have knowledge, but you also have to have a decision-making process that makes sure that knowledge is applied appropriately.
Yes. When you say decision-making process, it's really a process which is no process. What we're talking about here that makes the thing go is a framework of freedom. This can't happen unless people are free to pursue their own projects, to run their own lives independently, with the assurance that their government will provide a framework in which they will be protected in their projects, in which their property will be protected, in which the fruits of their imagination and effort and hard work will not be snatched from them. They need the framework of some stability to be able to rely on the fact that tomorrow will not suddenly, unpredictably be different than today. And it's within that broad, abstract framework of freedom that individuals' decision-making processes can take place. So when you say decision-making process, Bob, we're talking about the decision-making process of individuals, of teams, of partnerships, of firms, but not a decision-making process of the economy at large, except if you mean by decision-making process the decision to give people freedom.
Are you a member of a large family?
Unfortunately, I have no brothers and I have no sisters. And when I was growing up, the sweetest word that I could hear, the sweetest word I knew of, was my brother or my sister. And when my children say that about each other, it makes my heart go pit-pat every time. No, I came from a small family.
Have you always been an urban dweller?
I was born in Newark, New Jersey, which is a big city.
Yes.
It was a lower middle class working area that I lived in until the age of 9. And then we moved to a suburb near Newark. And those experiences were very important to me. I think that my experiences wherever I have lived and the experiences that I've been told about by other people have been very important in affecting my thinking. One of the most important of such experiences was my knowledge of my grandparents and my knowledge from my grandparents of what their lives had been like. Allow me to say a couple of words about my grandmother. I was interested in this connection. My grandmother came to this country when she was 17 years old. She was an orphan who had been raised under very harsh conditions from the time she was orphaned at the age of 6 in a town in Austria, a largely Jewish town, poor. She came here. She had never been to school a day in her life. And she went to work in the garment industry in New York. Hard work, long hours, difficult conditions. In 3 years, she saved enough money, so she heard about Newark, New Jersey, across the river from New York, and she opened up a hardware store. And that hardware store, we have a picture of it. It's much smaller. It was much smaller than this room which we're taping this. It was maybe 15 feet deep, maybe 10 feet wide. And every single morning, she would take the merchandise and she would hang the merchandise outside the store. The merchandise was largely picks and shovels and other utensils, which she sold to the Italian workmen in that area who needed to buy their own tools to work shoveling on construction projects. Because this was an Italian neighborhood, she learned to speak Italian before she learned to speak English. And she worked hard, and she brought her relatives over from Europe one by one. As each relative would come, they would stay with her for a while, learn some language, learn the hardware business, and then go someplace else in Newark, New Jersey and open a hardware store. And by the time I was born, the city of Newark was populated by hardware stores of the Friedman and Yeese's family. My grandmother was she was an extraordinary woman who enriched the lives of her family and enriched the lives of the rest of us as well. And she did this without a PhD, without a college education. And she did this because she had the energy and the character and the strength that so many people on the face of the earth have. And it's important nowadays, when many of us have college educations, it's very difficult for people to conceive that poor people without education also can sustain their own lives, can watch over their own families, can build, can create, and can take care of themselves and leave something over for other people as well. So those experiences form me very much, Bob.
Well, you wrote a book that it seems to me touches on that. It's called The Ultimate Resource. And at the beginning of the book, you do something I think is very unusual for an author. You share, you even title a little section, My Values, My Own Values, and you share with the reader your values. Was that necessary to your ultimate message?
I must confess that I have an autobiographical yearning, and I take the opportunity in the beginnings of books sometimes to tell a little something about myself. I think it is important that authors tell you where they're coming from and tell you what they believe, what their values are, so that it helps you understand what's happening in the book. So they're not concealing something and pretending that what they're telling you is pure science, unaffected by the beliefs and the values which they hold. So I do it for two reasons. First, I think it's honest and necessary for the reader of the book, but it's also because I enjoy telling a little about myself and how I came to write that particular book.
But you conclude the book also by coming back to the question of values, implying that we have to look at that as we judge various things. What's valuable to us? I think you're suggesting there related to people. Do we value people? So obviously value has a place or a part to play in the work you do.
I think you're right. I think that values play a particularly important role when we're talking about the economics of population. In the most fundamental way, if you use the standard that so many people do, which is, let's say, the average income of people, average per capita income, we could increase per capita income and wealth in the United States in the next 10 minutes, and we can increase it by a factor of 1,000 by getting rid of everybody except one person in 1,000. Throw them all to the sea, push them out someplace, and look how much there'll be left for you and for me. So that if our measure is purely how the average person is doing, and we look only in the short run, which is another value judgment, then that would lead us to some conclusions that I would think are pretty horrible by my values. My values also include how many people there are to enjoy life. The fact that there are 5 billion people on Earth now, as compared to the 2 billion not long ago, 1 billion 100 plus years ago, the 10 million 10,000 years ago, that to me is a good thing. I cheer that there are more human beings to enjoy life. And I think that most of us, if we would look inside our own hearts and our own values, would agree with this value.
But that's not a view you held consistently, if I remember.
No, I changed my mind about this.
Do you remember in your book the precise event that you mentioned as leading you to that change?